Hey everyone, welcome to Culture Binge, where we binge on everything in the zeitgeist and digest it back for you. Jared is out today. He's learning dressage. I'm your host, Alec, joined here by Serby and Alex.
Hey everyone.
Hi. Before we get into slaps and chaps, I want to ask you all to take 2 seconds out of your very busy day to fill out a survey form. It's so that we can have sponsors, so we can keep making the show because we need to pay rent and stuff. But we've made it a little bit more fun. We're asking questions like what topics you would like us for us to talk about. Maybe you have an idea for Brilliant Insane, or something interesting you think the masses should know about. So hit the link in the description. And thank you so much. We'll get right into the show now. Serby, what is slapping and what is chapping this week?
So I'll start with my chaps. I was at LAX the other day and I went to the restroom and the bathroom stall had gaps that were so large that I made eye contact with the woman waiting outside.
Oh,
and
yeah, I've been there.
It's the worst. And the gap between the door and the floor was also comically large. So that's what's chapping me, because if there's ever a need for privacy, it's in a public bathroom.
We've got a lot to say about that a little bit later, but yeah.
Did she just stand there?
Okay.
Did she hold the eye contact?
No, but I did. I was like,
who'll break first?
I was like, it's not gonna be me.
Have you ever,
I'm in here.
Have you ever walked in on somebody but they didn't lock the door, and then like, what is your problem, you know?
Yeah, I've done that before, and people get like really angry. And I'm like, dude, you didn't lock the door. And I did knock before I entered.
Oh, do you knock?
People are like, there's someone in here.
Yeah.
Do you knock before?
Anyway.
I don't know.
Alex doesn't knock. I don't knock. I mean, you just test the door handle if it's...
Yeah.
Anyway. So that's what's chapping. What's slapping?
So what's slapping? I found mosquito repellent bracelets on Amazon. And they work. They're made with lavender, clove, lemongrass, mint, and eucalyptus. And they last for a couple of days. You wear them on your wrist or ankles. And I'm super excited about this because normally the chemical ones, they just have that like super strong smell.
Yeah.
But these just have like kind of like it's a weird smell, but it's not off-putting. And they work, and I no longer have crazy allergic reactions to mosquito bites. So I'm very excited.
I use a lot of DEET, which I'm told is terrible for you.
I've heard it causes cancer.
Do mosquitoes, have they figured out what type of people, or like, is there a thing for what people are more attractive to mosquitoes?
That's super interesting. And I've wondered that because
Like,
my
I never
brother,
get bit.
if there's a mosquito like within like 90 miles of him, it will bite him. But my friend has said that she's only gotten like 3 mosquito bites in her entire life. So I wonder if it's like a blood type thing or maybe your diet. I don't know.
Might be. Alex, what about you? What's chapping your ass?
Chapping. So my mom is scared of flying. And because of that, whenever I fly, I get in trouble and berated if I don't text her before I take off and after I land.
Yeah.
Which is just like, I can't, like, that's so not important to me. So I've now share my location with her indefinitely. So the whole thing is that she can ask, like, where are you? Or like, what, I think so it's a little weird, but it saves me the headache of having to, like, I don't care that she knows where I am as long as I don't have to tell her,
Yeah. I sometimes will have interactions with my mother where it's like, hey, Alec, what's up? Via text. Oh, not much. I'm in California. Thanks for telling me about your life. But yeah.
I think my mom has the opposite problem. Like, I think she wishes that I would share less because there's oftentimes where I'll just be like, start voluntarily sharing like really personal details. And she's like, I don't need to know that. Like, tell your friends. I'm good.
Wow. Okay, I guess I'm fortunate that my mom cares about me. So I'm sorry for that.
Woes, Alex.
The slapping. Okay, so I'm now obsessed with TikTok. I don't know if that's happened to the two of you yet.
It's the only wholesome platform as far as I know.
It's getting, everyone's shitting on it, but it's amazing. It's so incredible. So are either of you on TikTok? Like, at least as a consumer?
I
What
get
is
sent
TikTok?
TikToks.
Alec, what?
I get sent TikToks, but I don't have the app. So I'm a secondhand TikTok user. But
Got
to
it.
answer your question, Serby, do you remember Vine? It's essentially Vine, but more musical.
Oh.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They they've created it so that the algorithm, it's just really smart. Like the second you start liking or following people, then the discovery section for you is so curated that there's such a high percentage of videos that you will love, which is so, like, it's an amazing place to lose hours of your day. And so they have these like two things. So one, there's just like these creators that emerge. I don't know, Joy or Mitch, can you pull up the Nasano one? So this guy is my current favorite. So can you guys see this?
What?
Some people just think that the blanket's falling from up high, but it's not. He's so good at it. He's incredible.
Wow.
Look at this. Look at that acting. Okay, that's enough. But you guys
All
can
right.
follow him. So that's one. But then you have the cooler things, which I like. Are there these like hashtag trends that emerge? So you'll have someone will think of an idea and then they'll put a hashtag on it. And so one that went viral a couple weeks ago was Walk a Mile, where you had to show yourself walking to the song like, I walk a mile in these Louboutins, you know? That song, I don't know who sings it, but it'll play in a sec. But you couldn't be wearing shoes.
Walk a mile in these Louboutins.
Okay, next one.
I think I prefer the
Walk a mile
angsty
in
ones.
these
These aren't angsty
Louboutins.
for me. Okay, that one's good.
But they don't wear these shoes.
So good. So then that emerges, and then I think the other ones that have been killing this week for me have been Mario Kart has been a cool one. So you go to an animal. So these are good. And then the last trend I like, and then I'm over TikTok, is the how-to trend. And so you find one of those like WikiHows, but you have to take one of the cartoon images that they've drawn and then execute it incorrectly. So this is the how-to run fast.
Ay, I walk around like that
on the trigger.
Okay, that's it. And so TikTok for me has been slapping. I encourage you to download it.
One of my favorite ones I saw was just like, here's how to make pancakes. Step number 1 is you want to make sure your parents are divorced. Step, and it just cuts out.
It's amazing.
Awesome. As for me, what is chapping my ass this week? Oh, the Matrix reboot. We're going to talk about that later. Not reboot, sequel. As far as what slaps is, I've become aware of algorithmically generated T-shirts. Now, these are they exist in a few different ways, but oftentimes, essentially, computers will pull data that is available about you through Facebook and create like very custom, very specific shirts about like what month you were born in, what your profession is. So a good one is, you know, I'm a badass because I was born in August and I play lacrosse, and like the things it's pulled is like your birth month and that you play lacrosse. But there is this guy on Twitter, David Gilbert. If we can show some of them, we'll take post a Twitter thread of pictures he's taken of them in the wild. Can we show one of those? Yeah, so that's a forklift operator. Can't really read that right now, but they're often very antisocial. So it'll be like, you better get out of my way or move. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, I'm a drywaller. Go to the next one. This is my favorite. I'm an asshole man. I love freedom. I love my wife. I can't read the bottom right now. I really should have pulled that up. But if you don't like it, you can move. They often end if you don't like it, move. And I can't tell if this is a real one or one making fun of the other ones. This is I'm a pee hole man. I love pee, drink pee, fuck my wife. I was born in May. I protect my meat. I eat guns. And I own my wife. If you don't like it, move. That one's probably fake, but you can buy it online now. I actually saw one over the weekend. It was, I'm a diesel mechanic because your honor roll student with an engineering degree couldn't build it right the first time. And I'm sure the algorithmic part is that it like swaps out diesel mechanic with every other kind of mechanic. There They're just amazing. There's a subreddit dedicated to like sort of spotting these or seeing these, but there's also entire stores on like Cafe Press where I'll just be like I heart, and then they'll pull all this kind of stuff from the dictionary. Like I heart saccharin is a shirt I found, or you could buy it as a mug, or I love my blank mom, like I love my French mom, or like I love my Chinese mom, or like it's just literally fucking every country. One company got in a lot of trouble because they were doing it with the keep calm and carry on format, and it was like keep calm and play poker or something, and they would just take all these phrases and words from the dictionary, but they weren't monitoring it, so they were selling shirts that said like keep calm and like rape them, and so they went out of business. So that is the dark side of this. Yeah. I like your visible discomfort, Jeremy. Anyway.
Do you think people are buying them because they think that they're a generic shirt that happens to make them feel like they're special but amongst a community? What do you think?
Kind of. Yeah. So I saw a review of one. It was another drywaller one. We didn't show it, but it's like, I'm a drywaller, so don't argue with me because I'm always right. And again, if you don't like it, get out of my way or something like that. And one of the reviews was just like, ever since I got this shirt, people haven't been talking back to me. But yeah, it's like a very antisocial affirmation of your weird sub-identity, whether you're a drywaller or an elevator mechanic or a forklift operator. And usually it ties that to other hobbies such as like owning guns or eating meat. And then if you've got a problem, it's weird because, you know, people often wear clothing to sort of like as a cultural symbol, like you're wearing a band shirt and someone's like, oh, you like Led Zeppelin? I like Led Zeppelin too, whatever. I wonder if someone's like, oh man, I'm a forklift operator too, and people are always in my way, let's be best friends, or people are just like, let's stay away from this guy. Yeah. Anyway,
Well, I'm glad
I haven't
there are
received those
shirts out there
ads.
for
Have
these
you
people.
had, so now that you've investigated that space, have you been retargeted with ads like that yet?
no, but I hope I will be one day.
Me too.
I was born in February, and I am a writer at Wisecrack, so you know that I know what's up. I don't know. All right, let's go on to our first topic. For this one, we have a very special guest. This topic was something we wrote about in our Medium publication. Everyone should check it out. But it's on the rise of toilet culture in Japan. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, we're living in the dark ages of toilets in the United States. As Serby mentioned, there are weird slots in public restrooms where you can see the other person and make eye contact. They're disgusting. There's no noise, so you can hear every horrible sound. And even the toilets in our home, the biggest innovation we've had is like 2 different flush buttons, since the invention of plumbing, as far as I know. But there is another way, and that other way is in Japan. So to talk about that, we've got Thomas. Can we get Thomas? Here we go. Hey, Thomas.
Hey guys, what's going on?
I think there is a link to Thomas's article. We're going to be talking about it, but it should be in the description or someone's going to put it in the chat. But anyway, first of all, what's going on in Japan with the toilets?
Well, it is honestly, Japan has a lot of cultural exports. Anime has made it huge. Video games are apparently causing mass shootings, and those are huge now. But when it comes to toilets, they haven't really made it over. And has anyone been to Japan or like sat on one of these golden toilets
I
before?
went in April.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your experience with it?
It was awesome, but also a little scary because I don't read Japanese, and all the remote controls for the toilets aren't in English also, so you kind of have to just like and there's no easy there's no good user experience to like be like, oh, that one's probably the flush button, so you actually have to go through all of them and like,
so your ass is either going to get sprayed with water or you're going to flush it.
Yeah, and
or it's going to
it's really sometimes the water is really strong. Like it's a lot of, like there were moments where I like screamed a little bit because I don't know, it's like like you're not ready for that.
The first time I like tried to use the bidet, so a little like background on these toilets, they range from like just a $200 toilet seat that you can install in your own home, and they like give you a little how-to guide, which just pretty much has an automatic like razor and a bidet, and that's about it.
Is it bidet or bidet?
I think that might be the time I spent in Britain, because that's like where that word like became introduced into my So I think Americans say bidet and British say bidet. Or I could just be speak like an idiot. So they have this whole range, and it's pretty much one company has like cornered the toilet market in Japan. It's Toto, and you can either get like a 200 just like basic seat, or you can have like a 600 like star fancy toilet. It has this thing called the Sound Princess, which essentially plays music and like makes noises so no one can hear what you're doing in the toilet. They have like automatic deodorizers, heated seats. It's like absolutely ridiculous. It's, all the smart home stuff with like Amazon Echo and Google Home, just like all that technology is pretty much crammed into the toilet. And it's been that way for like 30 years in Japan. It's wild.
Another article came out today about just toilets in general, and they mentioned Japan. But I guess most Americans were exposed to bidets in World War II when they were at brothels. So they assumed that they were somehow like immoral. Like they didn't fully understand, but like, this is bad. And then somehow a myth got created that they were a form of like contraception. So that is part of the reason why Americans don't use bidets as much as the rest of the world. And for anyone who doesn't know, that's the thing that shoots water at your beehole. And it's a better way to clean. It's been suggested that they're better for people with like hemorrhoids and stuff like that. But go ahead.
Well, I mean, that is, so the weird thing is, the super toilet washlet was originally an American invention, and it was targeted towards, people with hemorrhoids or like hospitals, nursing homes, essentially for people where wiping was difficult. And then the Japanese just like took it and ran with it and created this, porcelain perfection.
Yeah. And Toto's the brand, and your article talks about the not weird, but like the specific cultural circumstances where at the time where it became popular, there was very much a kind of cultural divide. You have kind of like the westernization of Japan and the backlash to that. But here was this sort of like American thing that was fully made Japanese to the point where like they are almost non-existent in America. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So Japan's just if you head over, it's just a really interesting mix of East versus West. Like you see that, and this is increasingly becoming so much of the world. You go over, you see all the advertisements for the Avengers and all the Marvel and American like cinematic properties come over. And, but randomly, you can still walk into like old parts of Japanese culture. And while now there's like a very good fusion between East and West in Japan, 100 years ago, it wasn't that case. And there's still, it was called, Niju Seikatsu, which means double life. And so in the early 20th century, when, Japan really opened its doors to the West, the Meiji era came in around 1860, I think it was 1868. They actually modeled their own government off like the Prussian Constitution. And they were making these giant pushes to essentially be Western on the world stage. And that engendered this giant backlash. So you have, on one hand, the government and people wanting to be westernized, and on the other you have like this whole literary movement called Nihon Kaiki, I think it's called, Return to Japan, which was adopted by like a lot of prominent authors, and it was this idea that we don't need the West, screw these guys, imperialist pigs, whatever have you. And so navigating that divide really became quite difficult, both for the Japanese people, but also for cultural products. And the washlet is just one of those weird things that is like somehow, as you said, Alec, it's somehow, it started off as American, but it's become so adopted by Japan that like, if you ask anyone where this toilet started, like they would look at you like you're crazy. Of course it's Japanese. It's 100% Japanese. Whereas, strangely, certain Western cultural practices and products haven't made it over because they weren't able to bridge this gap. One of my favorite, I don't know if this is real, but this is kind of like just urban legend. Apparently, American Pie did not have any reception with the Japanese audience. They just didn't get it because they had this idea that Americans are always having sex. So, like, the idea that American high schoolers like, "Ooh, I need to get laid," is like ridiculous to them. Another one is like it's the dishwasher. Like something insane. Like only 30% of homes in Japan have a dishwasher, whereas like it's 70-80% have a washlet.
I would rather, I think, have the washlet.
Than a dishwasher. Do you have a dishwasher in your
No,
little
I live in New York.
apartments?
Unless you're a rich person, you don't have a dishwasher, or you're incredibly lucky.
Do
What's
any of
a
the three of you?
washlet?
Yeah.
So
what's a
washlet is just the specific toilet that. So Toto's the brand. They make a thing, a toilet called the washlet. It is the Mercedes-Benz of toilets.
Oh, without a doubt.
And you said there was a specific moment with like the modern girl in Japan where there's kind of a cultural movement where, yeah, just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's I think everyone loves like going. It's so interesting between cultures how advertising preferences just change. And so Japan, so essentially there was a symbol of this in the early 20th century of this divided life, this two life system, East versus West. And it kind of got solidified in a single novel by this author, Junichiro Tanizaka. Yeah. And novel was Naomi, and it was about this, Western looking Japanese girl who worked in a cafe, and she was independent, and how the narrator just becomes obsessed with her and gives her everything she wants. And she kind of like essentially becomes the crowning jewel of his life and she starts controlling him. She doesn't want to have sex with him. He has to sleep by himself in a room and like hear her taking like Western lovers. She controls the money, and Tanizaka is like an interesting guy because he was part of that literary movement, the return to Japan literary movement. And so in a weird way, this like was supposed to be a kind of cautionary tale about the West, but that's not actually how, this divided nation read it. And so people are like, oh, this is great. This is, female like sexual empowerment, this is a great thing to be. And so this idea of this modern girl, or as was termed in the novel, became just the symbol of the divided life. And it's really kind of like telling is Toto went in the 80s when they started like advertising their washlet toilets. They kind of just like adopted a similar figure. Her name was like Togawa June, and she could do, the like demure like Asian stereotype from ages back. That's just speaking to that like cultural credence of like return to Japan in the early 20th century. But she was also a modern singer. And so they'd have like these insane like ads, like where a professor would be, extolling like something about the benefits of a traditional toilet. And she would like come out and just like scream like, no, unhealthy. I've been told that like an unhealthy lifestyle is bad. We must be clean. And then it just cuts to the Toto toilet. And there was some crazy like advertising slogans that like got out of this. Like it's something like just because it's your butt doesn't mean it wouldn't like to be washed, or
Yeah.
just as we have the era of washing your face, now the era of washing your butt has arrived. And it's like so absurd. And apparently they didn't air these. They didn't air these adverts during dinner time because they were scared of offending, the more conservative, viewership.
You don't necessarily want to hear about washing your butt during dinner time. I mean, I don't mind, but I understand if people
Do
are
any of
averse to it.
you have bidets, or do your families?
No.
No, but I do enjoy a good bidet.
Same.
I have seen them. I'm kind of, honestly, I through just sheer familiarity, I've become cool with like the Japanese toilets, but bidets just kind of scare me. I just don't know how
You never
they
used
work.
one?
No,
Alec?
like an American bidet. No, like my parents had like one randomly in this like really old house they used to live in, and it scared the shit out of me.
It is kind of, I've seen, like, I've had access to them where I was like, oh, I should use this. And then I get scared and I don't.
Yeah.
And that's on me. That's not a condemnation of the bidet.
Yeah,
Cool.
your worst case scenario isn't that bad. The first time I used one, I was actually 9, and I thought it was a drinking fountain, and it was in our family friend's place. Yep, and it was a terrible experience.
Oh.
It was horrible. I was like, "Mom, do you leave a water fountain in their bathroom?" And she's like, "Oh God, here we go."
Wow. That explains
Yeah.
a lot, man.
It does.
Oh
Yeah.
man, I would need years of therapy to get over that.
I mean, she didn't tell me at the time
Yeah.
what it was. She was like, "Don't do that again." And then 5 years later, I learned what I had done.
It dawned on you.
Yeah.
Well, everyone should check out. There's a link in the description / put in the comments. It's medium.com/wisecrack. Thomas wrote a great article. We've embedded one of those ads that is just delightful in it. You don't need to speak Japanese to understand it, but definitely check it out. Thomas has also written other great articles on there. You can follow him. You can follow us. Thank you so much, Thomas.
Yep. Peace, guys.
Bye, Thomas.
All
that was
right.
super interesting.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Before we get into the next topic, I just want to shout out Jude Abides, who made a donation and says, new segment for show, what's going on in Japan? P.S. Born in Okinawa, guess my ikigai is humor. Cool.
Oh.
And then Joseph donated and said, hashtag Serbi Mukbang 2019.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, what do we got next? I believe it's a story from Serbi.
Yes. It's not mukbang, but it is equally interesting. So Netflix announced that it would decrease depictions of cigarette smoking in its original programming after a study found that the show Stranger Things had more tobacco use than any program across any channel. So streaming, cable, whatever. And basically there's tobacco use in every single episode. So while Netflix has said that they'll decrease depictions of tobacco use, they haven't said anything about reducing smoking pot. So the reason is that Netflix argues that smoking is an artistic expression. But Alyssa Rosenberg, a writer from the Washington Post, summed it up quite effectively, saying that marijuana has a better lobbying message right now than tobacco does. And there's also this idea within companies that if you align yourself with marijuana use, it will make the organization more attractive or cooler with a younger population. So it's important to remember that tobacco companies in the 20th century pushed cigarettes in media through product placement. So historically, smoking on screen has not been about artistic expression. It has been about marketing. So medical professionals have expressed concern that once marijuana becomes widely commercialized, a similar type of product placement might happen again. So we might see celebrities smoking jewel pens on late night shows like they did with cigarettes back in the day. But let's rewind to the beginning of the story. What prompted Netflix to say that they'll decrease depictions of tobacco use? Well, 43 attorneys general signed a letter asking streaming companies to develop stronger practices when it comes to showing tobacco use on screen, saying that it can lead to influencing children and adolescents and developing later usage of tobacco. So some public health experts think that pot should be the next on the agenda. My question is, should the media decrease pot use on screen? Or should we wait to see whether studies show the adverse health effects of pot?
I think I'm more okay with pot because I don't think it's not addictive. I mean, smoking too much pot is bad for you, but not nearly as bad for you as nicotine and smoking cigarettes. So on that end, I'm a little bit okay. But yeah, the idea of the inevitable product placement that this will lead to. But I also think there's only a few cases where your character really needs to smoke. Like sometimes the character smoking is actual character development because they're old and in terrible health, and they in the same way you might portray an alcoholic, someone who chain smokes or something like that. It's not meant to be cool. It's just meant to kind of paint this picture. And similarly, weed often can just, it's an easy way to signal what kind of person they are. You know, they smoke pot, they have fun, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I think, I'm curious what Alex thinks, because I think it comes down to me that I'm not worried about kids getting addicted to pot.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that in my little circle of the people I know that do smoke weed versus those that smoke cigarettes, the ones that smoke cigarettes seem to have become addicted, right? And the people that have tried pot and still smoke do it like recreationally occasionally, I feel like, and are not attached to this thing as like a crutch for anxiety, which maybe is not totally true, but I guess, yeah, to your point, I don't see it as problematic, but I bet there's what I'm always interested to figure out, or I'm interested to see what happens in the next 40 years is like, what is the actual like cancer and more importantly, I guess, COPD rate that you contract from smoking marijuana instead of cigarettes, you know?
Mm.
So there is a medical professor from UCSF who stated that this idea that marijuana is harmless is not true because he has said that marijuana has the same adverse effects on blood vessels as cigarettes. So they haven't done studies yet, I think, to see the long-term health effects of marijuana, but I think that is concerning to see that there is some similarity.
Yeah. I think especially when it comes to heart disease and stuff, the smoking, but I guess that is concerning. But I still think the regular use case, there are people who smoke like 8 times a day, and that's probably terrible for their cardiovascular system. But I think whereas cigarettes, because they're addictive, inevitably pushed people to smoking a pack a day or something like that, that doesn't necessarily happen with weed. But like, I'm receptive to your argument. Like, I guess I'm open to hearing studies like that and more. I guess we should pay attention to it. I also, the thing that you said that kind of resonates is the minute that it's like, say, fully legalized and big corporations with advertising dollars can get involved and then do product placement, that's the moment where I'm like, oh, it's definitely going to be super sketchy. Whatever they're doing, like, just put enough money behind it, it'll get sketchy if it's not sketchy already. Like, Philip Morris is just going to get in the weed business.
Yeah, I mean, you totally assume that big tobacco is going to move into marijuana if they haven't already, right? Like, they should, you know? Yeah.
So I think the product placement and the marketing thing of anything, like even if it was like alcohol or pot or junk food, like whatever it is, that would bother me. Anything in excess, and as soon as like big corporations start to push advertising dollars into something, that's when I feel like bad things can happen and anybody can be influenced. Doesn't matter if you're an adolescent or a child.
But then whose responsibility is it to like dictate what type of products should be allowed and what type of content, right? Is that up to the content creator?
I think it would be up to the content creator, and I think the only reason why they would be influenced is from the consumer, and from like maybe health experts or attorneys general, something like that. But I think like Disney is one organization that has like done like self-imposed limits on like tobacco use and things like that. So I think it's mostly like, what is your end goal? Like, do you want to be aligned with health initiatives, or do you just care more about artistic expression?
Yeah, I mean, I like, not to speak for all creators, but I think for us even, right, we won't push products that we think are harmful to our like viewers or our fans, right? And I think that's important. But I mean, also, you do have scenarios where you have like big Twitch streamers, right, who do post things for like energy drinks, right? And so is it their responsibility? It probably is their responsibility, right, to think like, oh, these aren't good for my fans, right?
Yeah, for me it's often even stuff I do, right? Like like cannabis products that people reach out and they want us to advertise. I'm like, oh, well, I'm like fine with it, but if like I don't want to be responsible for like getting a 15-year-old into weed. They're gonna get into weed themselves. I don't care. I won't judge them. But like, I'm not gonna try to. I don't know. It's just there's been like a weird moment in the last 6 months where I'm like, oh, we have a weird influence on people, and that scares me because I don't want to influence people in a bad way.
Mm-hmm. It is about appealing to your fans, though, right? So I guess, Serby, what do you think of like the scenario in which you have some type of dark content where you have a lot of, call them like ethically shady people in a piece of content who are doing things that are bad for their health, right? Is the point of that's okay because those aren't people that you idealize? Like, I guess, where's the line there, right?
So I don't quite understand the question. So are you saying that the core audience is already interested in those types of activities, or?
Yeah, I hate to take an example of like It's Always Sunny, right? So there's like characters that might not be people that you ethically look up to, right? Or assume you don't hope to aspire to be, right? So if those individuals are product placing, if those characters are being product placement endorsers for things that are like cigarettes, is that okay with you then? Because then maybe, I'm just curious. Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, I think that there are other ways to illustrate like a character's development or motivations without doing like product placement. Like we don't have to show somebody like snorting coke off a hooker's back in order to like show. I mean, I'm not saying that people shouldn't do that, but I think that there's a way to like, I'm not expressing myself very well, but I think that there's a way to express yourself artistically without relying on cigarettes or smoking pot. And I don't know the answer. Like I'm not saying that we should decrease pot usage. I don't know. Like I can see both sides. I definitely think we should not show cigarettes on television.
All right.
But pot, I don't know.
All right, let's move on to Alex's topic, which is Burning Man. I have thoughts on Burning Man in that people who go to Burning Man will never shut the fuck up about themselves going to Burning Man. And you've gone to Burning Man, and you just got to talk about it, man.
Yep. Thank you for allowing me to express myself, Alec. I really appreciate it. So this was, I read this article that was, the headline was Tech Billionaires Haven't Killed Burning Man. Burning Man's anti-capitalist spirit, but influencers might. And it was just running through how Burning Man's changing and then what's happening and how influencer culture is starting to change this thing that started as like a place for creativity and self-expression and for being present, and how it's morphing.
What's the original? They're kind of talking about the original, not original criticism, but the predominant criticism is that it used to be kind of a bunch of hippies in the desert building stuff, and then like Taylor Swift shows up with $1 million tent or something like that, right?
Totally. So it originally started in 1986 by this guy, Larry Harvey. It was on a beach in San Francisco. And at the end of this, like, just little, call it like hippie gathering, they burned this, I guess, like statue of a man. And then that happened annually. And then it got shut down by the cops. And then so they launched it in this desert outside of Reno. And over the years, it's just blown up where this year it'll be 70,000 people around going, which is a lot of people. And it's just changed over the years, and the article is walking through how it's changed. And tickets used to be like free when it was a little gathering, and now I think the tickets are around $450 are regular tickets. They have low income tickets that are around, I think, $150, and then they have high end tickets which I think are closer to like $1,200 or $1,400. So it's about, how do you allocate those tickets? Is this, although this is a nonprofit entity owned by a for-profit, how does that affect its agenda? And so far, like from the research I've done, it seems to be very kosher, right? So they did $44.5 million in revenue in 2017, $3.7 million net, so like revenue minus expenses. But then of the top 10 salaries, the highest salary was $261, and 10 salaries below that was $145. And I don't know, they've done a pretty good job at taking all their excess profits and either donating them back to different foundations or the community themselves, or sponsoring grants for art at Burning Man. But the article itself was more focusing in on what you're talking about, which is, what happens when there was this camp called Camp Humano, which was, I think, 2018, where they had a bunch of Bedouin tents and they were $25,000 a week, or a 2-bedroom lodge for $100,000 a week. And so that obviously changes the ethos, and not only the type of person that goes and wants that experience, but how that affects the other people that are there just staying in a tent. How does it make you feel? How does it change how present you can be, and how detached from, I guess, like, commercialization as you can be. Yeah.
Right, because the original ethos was all about like building and kind of not escaping like temporarily escaping the system or the man or whatever, right?
Yeah, they have these 10 principles that they launched, I think, 10 years ago. The CEO, she saw that there was this change that was occurring, and they have these like 10 gifts that are everything from like radical inclusion to gifting to participation and civic responsibility. But all these things start to change when you have a culture that's centered around, individual brand, right? So how does that look when you leverage
influencers?
Yeah, individual influencer brand. Yeah. So how does it look? And it happened last year even, I noticed it, where, it was only my first time going, but I felt myself being really present. I had my phone with me, and then I'd watch people take photo shoots of like these gorgeous costumes that were beautiful. And and then I'm wearing like some like stupid leggings and a dumb like tank top. That for me, like that's self-expression, because like clothing for me isn't a huge importance to my life. But then there's also this contradiction where it's, how do I judge this person who maybe their artistic expression is through their clothing, right? Or through taking like capturing these moments for posterity where they are proud of how they look and the fashion they've designed. And so it's like, how can I stand on a pedestal and be like, my way of self-expression is better than yours? And it didn't feel, I don't know, there's a weird contradiction there.
And so is it, so influencers are ruining it because they're just, what does the article say in regards to that?
So the article is saying that Burning Man will continue to be at a more difficult crossroads each year, where you have these it's hard to police this type of stuff, right? So they've done stuff where they have in their terms and conditions when you purchase tickets, it says, I think I wrote it down, it says something like allowing the organization to issue cease and desist letters if images are used for anything other than personal reasons, right? So if, Evian goes and sponsors you to go take a picture of you drinking an Evian water bottle and then you post it afterwards, they could theoretically issue you like an cease and desist for posting that on your Instagram. But not only is that expensive, it's like hard to do, right? And so the question is, how do they maintain this community of like disconnecting and being present with the fact that there's no cell service, there's no Wi-Fi, but you assume over time this will just be an influx of more people being more materialistic and less present. Yeah.
I don't think there's a way for the organization to stop this. I think there'll have to just be another event or something where it's like a tight-knit community, and then eventually it'll grow. The same thing will happen, so they'll have to keep spinning off.
Yeah, any movement or event you build will get ruined, and then you have to make another one. Cool.
Yeah, it is. They did. That camp wasn't invited back, by the way, just so you know, that $20,000 camp. Yeah.
Oh,
so that's good.
For $20,000 camp.
I'm happy about it.
Was it run by Billy McFarland?
It was not. He probably's been, though.
Cool. Well, for our next segment, we have another very special guest, back from his dressage lessons. Is he around? Alex, is he outside the door?
I think Joy's getting him. Yeah.
We're getting our next very special guest to talk about The Matrix.
How exciting.
Yeah,
Ladies and gentlemen,
Share
Jared
pictures.
Bauer. He wasn't really doing dressage.
Jared,
lessons
wow.
Like the movie Clerks, not even supposed to be
Amazing.
here today. But when I heard that The Matrix 4 was announced, I had to butt my way in. How's it going, guys?
Welcome, Jared.
Hello.
Glad to have you.
It's going well. So, Jared, you are our ultimate Matrix fan. Just in case anyone's missed it, what is your relationship to The Matrix as a child?
Have you already told them what the announcement was?
Well, the announcement is that The Matrix is getting a sequel, The Matrix 4.
It's not really specified whether it's The Matrix 4 or a prequel, but Carrie-Anne Moss and Keanu Reeves are attached, so we're meant to believe it's a sequel. But then again, both characters are dead at the end of The Matrix 3, so I guess that's the quote-unquote most reasonable assumption to make, but I don't know. But yeah, long story short, I've mentioned this on a couple other podcasts, including our 3 podcasts on the Matrix movies on our movie podcast. But The Matrix changed my life. If it wasn't for The Matrix, there'd be no Wisecrack. It is what made me obsessed with movies. It's what made me interested in philosophy. So the Wachowskis they've had a huge impact on my life.
So the movie is starting production in early 2020. I read an article that was suggesting Keanu Reeves' success, both with John Wick and Toy Story, kind of helped justify doing this because now he's a kind of big ticket item.
Sure.
And then it was implied that Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne, not that Lawrence Fishburne wouldn't be in it, or at least is not in it yet. But are you worried?
All right.
The second and third movie already suck so bad.
First of all, I just want to say, let's see if it happens. I'm not entirely buying the fact that this is going to ever enter production. I don't think the Wachowskis have written a script yet. If she turns in a script that's basically action philosophy 4, there's a good chance the studio's like, we're not interested, and maybe there will be there's just so many things that can go wrong in development. So we'll see if it happens. Secondly, one of the things that's a little bit disconcerting for me is that, Keanu Reeves is 15 years older than he was when The Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions came out. when he's in John Wick, it's a lot of shooting, so he's able to kind of keep up. But even in some of the scenes when he's doing hand-to-hand combat with those two guys from the raid at the end of John Wick 3, you can see he's getting a little bit slower. And, I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why Lawrence Fishburne, I don't think Lawrence Fishburne has kept up with his martial arts training at all. So I don't think we can expect him to be in more badass action sequences. Keanu Reeves will probably do something, and it'll probably be great. But if they have to rely... If he's still the central action star and they have to rely more on special effects to do the action, it won't be as special, because one of the things that made The Matrix so amazing is that they taught real Hollywood actors how to be Jet Li.
So cool.
Yeah.
What's that Will Smith movie coming out where he fights himself? Right?
Oh, the Ang Lee movie. I don't know
Yeah.
what it's called, but yeah, that looks pretty cool too.
Yeah, what if they
I don't
just
think
CGI his
maybe they'll
body?
de-age Keanu. I don't know. That would be interesting. But what I find interesting about this is that most people are excited about it, and I'm kind of on board with that. And I think there's a number of reasons. One, I think enough time has gone by. It's interesting. This announcement has happened a couple times over the years. Every year or so, you hear that, oh, they're rebooting The Matrix, oh, they're making a new trilogy, oh, they're doing a prequel, oh, they're doing a sequel, whether or not the Wachowskis are attached or not. And usually the response has been like, ugh, no, that had a definitive ending, leave it alone. But people are a little bit more optimistic about it, and I think it has a little bit to do with what Alex said, that Keanu Reeves is kind of a huge icon these days. Also, I think that people really want Lily and Lana Wachowski to have a win again. It's been a long time since they've had a win. There was Speed Racer tanked, and Jupiter Ascending tanked, and Cloud Atlas tanked, and Sense8 got 2 seasons, but they had to close down their Chicago-based production studio because that wasn't renewed. So it's just been failure after failure for these two people who revolutionized cinema in many ways. It's just people want them to win again. And so I think that's one of the reasons why people are optimistic about it. At the end of the day, no matter how concerned I am that it may not be great, I'll be there opening night. I mean, there's no way I won't be.
Are you gonna wear a Neo costume?
If my Neo costume still fits, yes.
Does it not fit because you've grown upwards or sideways?
Probably both. Actually,
Both?
no,
Okay.
probably just sideways, if I'm being honest.
Wait, Jared, have they spoken about making a sequel in the past, and it's been like, have they personally spoken
I don't
about
think
it, or it's been
so.
studios?
Well, the other thing I want to bring up is that in the Variety article, which I think is the one that's being circulated, Lana Wachowski says, many of the ideas Lily and I explored 20 years ago about our reality are even more relevant now. I'm very happy to have these characters back in my life and grateful for another chance to work with my brilliant friends. So this is one of the reasons why I'm really excited. Because as we mentioned in our Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions Show Me the Meaning podcast, the ideas that they were trying to communicate in those movies are much more relevant today for a number of reasons. And so it's encouraging because it still sounds like she's committed to making what I call action philosophy, where it's not really a movie. It's just philosophy with some action sequences to it. I mean, that is essentially what makes the second 2 movies hard to watch, or quote-unquote not very good, because it's less concerned with creating a really engaging dramatic arc than it is teaching you about kind of central tenets of postmodern philosophy. So, I don't know. Is she going to try to do less than that? Is she going to try to maintain that but just communicate these ideas in a new way, perhaps a way that will sink in a little bit more? I still contend if Reloaded and Revolutions came out today, I think more people would get it. So,
yeah, I do wonder if this becomes a why the simulation is real type of movie, you know?
yeah, so less about that. I mean, the second and third movies are very much about talking. So the first movie is about how, you know, it's quote unquote awakening you to the division between real and unreal. And then when the second movie came out, they were like, all right, well, how do we blow people's mind even more? How do we awaken them to the next step? And the next step is talking about how, you know, like the first movie is about how Neo gets agency, takes control of his life by realizing that I'm living in a simulation. And in the second movie, they try to explain the idea that, well, there is this power structure that oppresses both the machines and the humans, and we have to break from this structure. So the reason why I think this would be more relevant if it came out today is because people use terms now like structural racism, where they understand that it's not necessarily individual actors that are acting racist, but rather it's this tradition, it's a set of laws, a set of incentives that perpetuates this cycle of prejudice or racism or whatever people are talking about. And this is very much what the second movie is about. And then the third movie is about how these systems can even inform how you distinguish between real and unreal. And so I don't really know where you go beyond that, like if you were to take one step above that. And since Lana seems aware that these ideas that she tried to communicate are kind of being talked about in the zeitgeist outside of academia these days, it seems like maybe she's going to try to reinstill these ideas into people, but make it a little bit more accessible, perhaps make it sink in more, not it be a 10-minute, very hard to follow discussion by the architect that requires the thesaurus to even understand. So, yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Alec? Are you just super skeptical?
I was super skeptical, but I think you got me excited about it.
Yeah, I just think enough time has gone by, and to be honest, they changed my life once, and even if they think that they can do it again, hell, I'll give them my $15 to see if they can do it.
My overall concern, and it's not the Matrix is just like a symptom of it, but that we've entered into an age of zombie culture and that like nothing can die. So well, especially the main characters apparently are not dead, which is a little bit weird, but I mean, whatever. Right. So maybe Neo's literally a zombie, but just the idea that you've told a self-contained story, it has a beginning, middle, and end, and it makes a statement, and then it's like, no, we have to bring it back. And that happened, according to you with, Toy Story 1, 2, and 3. They didn't need a fourth one. It's going to happen when they get like 8 new people to play Spider-Man. It's going to happen. And to me, this is most concerning about the MCU is that so far, whatever, it's fine. But at some point, it'll just be like, please stop it. Like, let this go gracefully into the night,
Oh, wasn't there a soft announcement that that Warner Brothers is considering rebooting Harry Potter, and people got kind of angry?
Whoa,
I did not see that, but
Jacob mentioned that. But to me, that's just, I mean, give it another 5 years, and people might not be so angry about it.
I would be down for a Harry Potter TV show. Sorry, Serby.
I would be down for like an adult version, like a Netflix kind of like mature Harry Potter, but not about the central characters. Maybe like the darker side, like about Death Eaters or something like that. I would be interested in that.
Or
now, Alec, the one thing I will say,
yeah,
I'm going to say in defense of this zombie culture, if ever there's going to be another movie that can be what I'm calling action philosophy, it's only going to be The Matrix. They're never going to give the Wachowskis or anybody else a blank check to create something that ambitious. This is really the only way something like the original Matrix, or even something with the philosophical ambition of the second 2 films, are ever going to get made in the current economy of motion pictures. So, in that sense, bring it on.
Yeah, I totally support it. It doesn't even if it isn't very good, it doesn't remove how amazing the first ones were,
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though that is often a fear you have.
And at the end of the day, I know this sounds super lame, but I'm going into that movie with a notepad. I want it to be more of a text for me to study for the next 5 years than it is I want to be entertained for the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I have a very strange relationship with these movies.
Yeah. I feel like at the office, we're going to need like a plan. Like if The Matrix is good, you have to come back to the office and we're going to have a celebration for you. But if it's bad, we need like sort of mental health support for you. We need like a couple puppies at the office maybe. You can pet them. We'll put Woody in a suit.
If it's bad because it's boring but still thoughtful and ambitious, I'll be okay. If it's bad, boring, and has no ambition, then I might be
Yeah, I guess what's the bar for you,
catatonic.
given how high the first?
Well, I mean, the second movies are still kind of disappointments in the sense that they're not very fun to watch. Have you seen all of them?
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about the second 2?
No, all I remember was being little and staring at a spoon, thinking I could try and move it if I thought hard enough, and it didn't work.
Yeah, most people, if you ask them, hey, summarize what happens in the second and third movies, they couldn't tell you. I mean, I've seen the third movie many times, and even I would have to make certain interpretive leaps to tell you what happens in the third movie. But yeah, the second two movies are a disappointment in that sense, but not in a sense that what I wanted. I mean, the first movie was philosophical and a great action movie, and I wanted that from the second two, and they chose philosophy over a great action movie, and I respect that because no one else is going to make that decision.
Cool. Well, before we get into the mailbag, I just want to remind people we have a survey in the description. So to keep making this show, we need sponsors, and we need to know a little bit about you to do that. So fill that out. We've also made it a little more fun. You can suggest topics you're interested in, possibly brilliant or insane, just anything. So hit that link in the description, and thank you so much. Pretty sure, yeah. Anyway, we're also going to skip voicemails today. We got a couple really long ones. But anyway, Jared, what's the number for people to send us a voicemail?
Yeah, if you want to send us a voicemail, it's 213-534-8807 or 21-ELF-HUT-07. The place where you party with the elves.
All right. So the first email we have is from Nasanda. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name. But they say, "Hi, Wisecrack crew. I am really pissed off at the story Serby brought." Not at Serby, FYI. I was confused for a second. But they're pissed at the story about the white knight lady who is taking in malnourished children. We can sit here and blame all these people who think they can come over here in Africa or go to other third world countries in other regions. Some of them out of good intentions or just plain ignorant tend to misstep a lot, but I think the onus should be more on the governments that allow these types of things. The health ministry in Uganda should have known better. On the other hand, yes, I think all these narcissists should be stopped. All these people should be accountable, and there should probably be stricter international guidelines on how people can install NGOs in underdeveloped regions. And that is Nasanda from Angola. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I was also outraged.
Yeah, the ability of, I think this is like a common criticism of the NGO world, in that the ability of them to just set up shop anywhere, especially in places with not as like developed or well-functioning governments. It's just like absurd. It's like not a foreign adversary. That's hyperbolic. But like, yeah, like like foreign people can just set up shop and kind of set the policy of what your country does. And I'm not gonna be that mad. I don't know much about the Ugandan government, but I'm sure they've got a lot of stuff to deal with. And they can't. It might be harder for them to keep track of like every person who comes with some mission to save everyone.
I will say, in defense of the Ugandan government, the clinic that the woman started, it was not supposed to have overnight visitors, I believe. It originally started as a place where children can come and get a meal and then go back home. So I think a local hospital then pushed her, or not pushed her, but asked her to take in children. So I will say that the government did have something in place, but there were no regulations or there was no enforcement of that.
All right. The next email is about Lost Girls. That was Jared's Brilliant or Insane last week. This one's from Emmanuel. I've read Lost Girls, and I don't think it's, quote, an old man's sick fantasy. I think we called it that. For one reason,
Did I?
for one reason, because I actually felt for these characters. Unlike the usual smut I've come across, Lost Girls actually has a reason why these three women would gravitate towards each other as characters, and I think the expression of their fondness of each other is simply just depicted as the depraved sex and not actually about the sex itself. By this I mean the over-the-top sexual acts are more of a metaphor for how these three characters manage to find some connections with themselves and others, like Alice learns about how human beings or adults being addicted to power, like the same way she gets addicted to opium. Lost Girls is about three women finding themselves and dealing with their circumstances and the circumstances of the world changing around them. Moore just chose not to represent all this as just dialogue and melodrama. Anyway, I also don't have any personal connection to any of these children's stories, so I don't feel as offended to have them retold like this. Thanks for bringing this comic up. I was sure I would never hear of it being spoken of ever. Keep up the good work. This email, and I had to bridge it a little bit. I think this person did a better job of explaining why it's important and not a creepy old man's fantasy than Jared did. Not to throw shade, Jared.
Why? What did I mean, we got a lot of emails, people talking about defending it. Some people also saying that it was inappropriate, but nobody was really saying that what I said was wrong.
I don't think that what you said was wrong. I think that when I first learned of it, I heard that there were like sex acts between like children and things, and that's where I was like, oh, this is hard for me to listen to. And there are, I agree, but I think that some of these emails that came through of people who have read it and they analyzed it a bit, I saw a different perspective. So I think if I had gone in with more information, my analysis would have been a bit different.
So one thing I definitely omitted was looking into the work of Melinda Gebbie. She's apparently
She's Alan Moore's wife, right?
Yeah, I think so. But she also has a history of doing like feminist illustrations, and she's apparently pretty renowned in her work. And I hadn't really done a lot of homework about her. I mostly just kind of, I reread it before the podcast and didn't really do any independent research, and just from my knowledge of Alan Moore and what the text explicitly says about the kind of healing, escapist nature of pornography, which I still think is there. But in terms of it being this, so we had someone named Francis wrote in, and he linked us to a paper that considers the history of the illustrator Melinda Gebbie, and he linked to a scholarly article that basically talks about how the obscene in the text can push against purity narratives attached to womanhood, these narratives that can potentially stigmatize all girls and women. That's something I hadn't really explored. But, I mean, like any text, there are multiple interpretations based on who studies it. And so, and like with anything that Alan Moore puts his name to, people are going to continue to look at it critically.
Yeah, and so I think my point wasn't that like, oh, you're wrong, Jared. It's just like, oh,
I mean, I did bring it up for the shock value. I mean, that's why it's brilliant or insane.
I'm just saying, like, the Linda Gebbie email and this one, I think contextualize it in a way that was more like, oh, okay, I can see this. I'm not going to give it a brilliant necessarily, but it definitely, I think, counters the narrative that's an old man sick fantasy. But the next email we have thinks it is an old man sick fantasy. So this is an email from Max. Hey, Wisecrack, I'm Max, and I love your guys' podcast. I wanted to comment on the Lost Girl segment of the most recent episode. I haven't read the series, but just going through the plot summary on the wiki page makes the whole thing feel like jerk-off material for guys who get off on women suffering in child porn. And as an aside, like, I haven't read it, Serbia hasn't read it, and Max is also saying he hasn't read it. But anyway, if the wiki summary is anything to go off of, there's a lot more sexual abuse and incest in the series than I feel like was mentioned in the episode. Dorothy has sex with her father, Captain Hook rapes Peter's sister, and so on and so forth. It doesn't read a story about sexual freedoms so much as sexual trauma, and honestly, what little I know about the series just makes me severely uncomfortable, not to mention the fact that using children's novel characters, even aged up versions, just feels perverted to me in of itself. Maybe I'm wrong about some of this, but I certainly don't care to read it and find out. Keep up the good work, and I look forward to future episodes.
I don't think either one of these perspectives is invalid. I mean, if you read it and it seems perverted to you, well, that seems justifiable. If you read it and you really connect with the characters and there are certain themes about trauma and womanhood and victimization that resonate with you, that's also a valid reading.
Yeah.
So I only listened to the episode. I haven't read the book. Is part of the reason, or is part of the narrative here, like how untreated trauma comes to fruition later in adult life? Is that one of the stories that's told?
Yeah, all of them have some sort of trauma that they were either had sexual experiences too early or were sexually abused. I think all of them were sexually abused in some way, and then they kind of take agency or reclaim agency in their lives by exploring their sexuality together. So there is a kind of very positive kind of healing nature of taking sex and reclaiming your mental health even just by exploring your sexuality and distancing yourself from predators in your past. Yeah. Which is not how I initially had read it, but I can definitely see that.
I have a question. If there are any listeners who have studied psychology, if they could write in and tell us if that is a way that people overcome trauma and process trauma, I'd be really interested in hearing that. Just because I haven't heard of that. So I'd be curious.
Yeah. As far as there's a part of this email that talks about like children's characters growing up. I don't care about that. You know, like if some person wrote in about how they enjoy like Harry Potter erotica. and I think explicitly to jerk it to it. Anyway.
Well, there was another email, and I don't know who wrote it in, but somebody mentioned that, and this could be wrong. This person could be making it up, but let's just assume it was true. He said that there was a study that suggested that illustrated child sexual images actually decreased child predator rates. If that's the case, if it actually decreases, because when you're uncomfortable with these images, it's because you believe that they could translate into real world harm. But if we're assuming that the science says the opposite, then would that make you more okay with it? Once again, these are illustrated images.
I think if it's true. I don't know if it's true.
If it's true.
It's an interesting data point, but I still think there are other outcomes to that. Like, so, let's say it's decreased child predators. I think there are parts of Japanese culture with, like, not necessarily underage women, but women that look underage that I find, I'll just say, super off-putting. And I think a lot of, like, women find it super off-putting when, like, you walk in a mall and there's just, like, fuck dolls everywhere. And I can't imagine that stuff like that doesn't kind of feed into that.
Yeah, it's a big if.
Anyway.
Yeah, when I was in Japan, I found it super weird. Also, there's that question though, and Serbia, I hope that we get something written in. That'd be really interesting and cool. Because there is that question. That woman opened up that, was it Denmark or somewhere in Scandinavia, like a pedophile treatment center where you could go and you could talk. You could, like, it was like a treatment center if you were having pedophilic urges to go somewhere, and like it got shut down immediately because even like addressing that as an issue that you could talk about was a thing that was shunned.
I think that's a thing in the West too, in that if you are a pedophile, I don't think you can talk to a therapist about it because a therapist
has to
in the
report
same
it.
way that if you tell your therapist you're going to murder somebody, they have to alert the cops. I think it's similar with any kind of orientation towards children like that.
Yeah, that's tricky. Moving on, though, to our last email, which is not about pedophiles. So here's an email for. There's one note that I want to give, which is I saw one of the emails said, like, "Oh, Alec is awesome." And I was like, it made my day. I was like, "Oh man, this is so uplifting." And then I realized I made a joke yesterday that I will read emails if they compliment me, and then I felt dead inside again. I'm not reading that email.
Well, now if you get more compliment, it's going to be people just reacting to this, so you'll never really get an authentic one now.
Yeah, I'll just live in self-doubt for the rest of my life and enter a spiral of nihilism. It's fine. So, email from Alex. Nice name, bro. Or broette. Hey, Wisecrack. I've been a long-time consumer of your various content and love all the amazing stuff y'all do. Thanks so much for bringing deep analytical thought and conversation to culturally relevant topics. I was just listening to episode 13 on Culture Binge, and at the end, you all started talking about the D&D community in response to some emails and voicemails. I've been running D&D games for 20 years, and in my current campaign have a player with Asperger's. He has talked about how much easier it is for him to interact with people within the structure of the game, and that has led to him being comfortable with other players, enough to become friends outside the context of the game, which has been really valuable to him. P.S. If Alex's D&D game falls through, it did fall through, although I'm hoping to revive it, though I enthusiastically volunteer to run an online game for the Wisecrack crew.
That's awesome.
Oh, that could be cool.
That's so cool.
I'm interested in that.
Yeah, I want to do an online. I think some of our patrons have also, everyone's volunteering, but I would feel self-conscious. Like, I wouldn't want to do it to an audience because I'd be too self-conscious unless I got decent at it. But yeah, I'll do it.
Me too.
Cool.
That sounds super cool.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Definitely, if you're interested in Japanese toilets or any other things that our amazing writers have to read about, go to medium.com/wisecrack. Also fill out that survey. And the last thing that I will implore you to do is to leave us a review on iTunes. It helps other people find the podcast. Thank you so much to Thomas, who's not here anymore. Thank you so much to Jared for popping in after he heard The Matrix was getting a sequel or prequel. Thank you so much also to Serby and Alex.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Bye-bye.